To begin, print your large clover on cardstock and cut out around the black line. Then, trace the clover 5 times onto the dark green felt using a ballpoint pen. Cut out around the clover, cutting off your ink line. Print your small clovers on regular computer printer paper. Use an Aunt Martha's transfer pencil to trace around the outside of the black line of the clover outline, making sure your mark is just outside the black line, then trace around the design on the inside of the clover. Be sure to press hard and make a dark mark as you trace. The darker your trace is, the better it will transfer to the felt. So press hard and also sharpen your pencil as needed so that the lines do not become too thick. With your iron on a medium setting for wool or acrylic, go ahead and transfer the pattern to the felt. Press firmly with the iron and slowly rub back and forth. Then lift the paper to see if the transfer has fully transferred. You can see here it hasn't, so I'm going to put it back down and press some more. So I wanted to show you the difference between the transfer when you push hard and make a really dark mark in your trace. Okay, so I've really pushed hard, pressed really hard as I've been marking, as opposed to the first time I did it, and this is the best transfer I could get, which I can't really see. So make sure you push hard and then also apply pressure as you're ironing, and you'll get a much better mark that's easy to see. So now I'm just going to cut out around, I'm going to cut out to the inside line of the red outline, just cut off the outline like that all the way around. I'm really taking my time to cut carefully so that I have a nice outer edge. They may each come out just slightly different, and that's okay. It's about the process, not about the perfection. So now that I have that cut out, I'm going to go ahead and match it up with this. All right. So now I'm going to get all my pieces ready to this point, and I'm going to baste them. I'm going to use the 699 DCM thread, and we're going to baste these together to start. So I'm just going to pull, probably 18 inches out for now. This embroidery pattern requires 3 strands, so you're going to take your embroidery floss and split it. So your embroidery floss is going to have 6 strands. And it's a little tricky to see sometimes, but I'm pulling it apart, and now I have 3 and 3. So here we have 3 and 3. And then we just pull it apart. And sometimes, see, it starts to get kind of wound up there. So that's when I get a little closer in and pull it so it's kind of taut. And then pull it again. Oops. It's not working. There you go, pull it again. Okay, and now your thread is split. We're going to use that in a minute. And I think it's kind of a pain to try to thread the needle with 3 strands, and so I am going to bend it in half right here. And I kind of fan this out a bit like this and pinch it really good. And then I just do that, wiggle it in like that, and pull it through. So because we're going to baste, I'm not going to put a knot in it, but we are going to just baste through the middle. So you're going to leave an end out like that. Okay, we're just going to leave that end out. You're not going to pull through it anymore. And we just want to baste each leaf so that we're, you know, there's a stitch in the middle. And now I've got a stitch on this one. Oops. All right, and we're just going to go along and baste the leaves down into place. And the stem, this is the blanket stitch one. The stem I'm going to leave. I think the stem you can kind of hold in place as you go. It should be just fine. So I'm just going to come right back up in the middle and cut that off. All right, and now I'm basted. All right, so once again, I've got my 3 strands of floss. I'm going to do a little bend here. I'm going to pinch and then wiggle the eye, wiggle the floss through the eye and pull it out, and then I'm threaded. You can also use a needle threader if you want to. And then what we're going to do is we're going to tie a knot. So the way that I like to do knots, I do it with my dominant hand because I just can't do it with my left hand. Sometimes it helps to lick your finger. I'm going to do that because it works a lot better to have just a slightly wet finger. I'm wrapping it around one time like this so that it overlaps. And then I'm just going to roll, do it one more time, sorry. I'm going to roll it off my finger. I'm going to keep a hold of it, pinch right here, and pull the thread down, and that makes my nice, lovely, large knot. Cross stitch is a very simple stitch. All it requires is for you to come up at the end of one line and go down through the other end to make a line, and then simply come up again on the other side and go down to make the cross over the line. As you cross stitch around your clover, you're going to run out of thread, probably 3 or 4 different times. When that happens, you turn it over so that you can see your thread on the back. You make a small stitch that just catches the dark felt, not the light green, so you won't see it on the front. So you just catch the dark felt, and then you pull your needle through, and there's a loop there, and you pull through the loop to be able to make a knot. And you're going to do that 2 or 3 times and then cut the thread off. And then you're ready to thread another needle, make your knot, and pick up where you left off to continue around the clover. So now that I have gone around the entire thing and done all my stitching, I'm going to take out my basting stitches. And because I didn't knot them, I really can just pull, except I have to find the beginning. So here's the beginning. So Just going to go from the back. It's a little easier to see. And there we are. Kind of rub out the holes. One done. Blanket stitch is a simple stitch. You come up just to the outside of the light colored felt to make your first stitch. And then you'll go down at the end of the line. And this way you would just push the needle up and under so it comes up basically in the dark green where you made your first stitch. Push the needle through. And then you're going to lay your floss to the right. Make your next stitch by pushing the needle down and then up through just outside of the light green again. And it catches in the loop and makes a line along the edge there of floss. So this blanket stitch is an applique stitch. As I'm making the stitches, my felt kind of shifts, so you just want to keep adjusting your felt as you go. Because the felt is thick, it's kind of tricky to do the blanket stitch this way. So if it works for you, you keep doing it. But you can also pull it all the way through to the back, leave a loop, come up through the dark green felt, and then pull your stitch. That seems to be an easier way to do blanket stitch when you're going through two thick layers of felt. So either method works, it's just which one works best for you. When you get to the corner's a little bit tricky since we have these deep corners that make up our clover leaves. So that stitch was a regular stitch, and now instead of pulling it to the right, we're going to simply stitch down and then come back up right in the corner and there's no loop to catch here. We're going to go down again into this next stitch. And again, there's no loop to catch here. You just pull the stitch all the way through and down. And then you come up in the same place. And now you pull the thread over to the right, go down, and come up at the top of the stitch just outside the light green fabric. And catch your loop. And now you're back to the basic blanket stitch. Going down, coming up, catching your loop. And you can see I keep adjusting because otherwise my green felt becomes uncentered. As you go around the clover doing the blanket stitch, you are going to run out of floss. When that happens, you come up as if you're making your next stitch, and instead of going to the right with your floss, you simply go back down through the green felt where you came up. It catches and makes a little loop there, and then you turn it over and tie it off like I showed you for the cross stitch. Once you've rethreaded your needle and made your knot, you're going to come up right at the same point that we went down last. So come up at the top of your last stitch in the dark green, pull your floss to the right, go down at the base of the next stitch over, and then come up at the top of the stitch, catching your loop. And sometimes it gets knotted on the back and you just kind of pull it to make sure that you get the knot out. So it can easily pull all the way through. And then you are back to your basic blanket stitch and you continue on. Continuing around the clover until you've finished and tied off. And then you go ahead and remove your basting stitches and you're finished with clover number 2. So this stitch is Lazy Daisy, and the Lazy Daisy stitch, you come up from the bottom and then what we do is we come back down in the same spot, okay, and we leave this nice loop. So I have my big loop kind of out here, right? And I'm going to come up at the other point of the top here. And what we're doing is making, so I've gone through my loop, right? So my loop is caught. So I'm going to catch it like that. And you can see it's made that little kind of teardrop shape, and then you just go down on the other side of the loop like that. And there's your Lazy Daisy stitch. So we're going to do that again. Okay, so we're going to do, that's a little tricky. We're going to do that again. So you come up right here at the bottom. Hold it over with your thumb. Going back down now to make your loop. You're going to come up through here. So that you're pulling and catching the loop like that. And then you're going to go down. And we just will continue along the next one. Hold it over. Save your loop. There's my loop. Come up through the loop. Pull it sort of tight. And then you're going down on the opposite side like that. And there's your Lazy Daisy stitch. Continue this stitch all the way around the clover, tying off and starting new floss when you need to. And be sure to remove your basting stitches at the end. To make the Y stitch, you are going to come up at the top of the arm of the Y and then go down at the top of the opposite arm of the Y. And then you're going to come at the top of the stem, catch the loop, and then make a larger stitch to make the Y of your stem going down. So once again, come up at the top of the arm of the Y, and then down at the top of the opposite arm of the Y. Hold your thumb on the thread to keep a loop. Sometimes it gets twisted and you have to untwist it. And then hold it there. Come up at the top of the stem of the Y. Catch the loop. And then stitch down at the base of the stem of your Y. And you're going to continue your Y stitch down the center of each leaf. And now we're going to tack the edges of our clover leaves down by taking 3 small stitches right next to each other, going up one side and coming down the other to make a stitch, just like we did with our cross stitch. But instead of crossing over, we're just going to make 3 of those right next to each other to tack down the edges of our clover leaves. Then remove your basting stitches and you're done. To make a French knot, you come up from the back through the center of the dot, wrap your thread around the needle 3 times, and then go back down the hole you just came up through. Hold the thread lightly but firmly, and then pull the needle down through. And that makes your French knot. And then we do the running stitch. And the running stitch, you simply come up one side of the line and go down on the other side of the line. And it just makes this nice little straight stitch. So once again, come up through the center of the dot to make the French knot. And then you wind the floss around the needle 3 times. Then you go back down through the hole you just came up out of, and you hold the thread and pull the needle through. If the thread is too firmly tight around that needle, sometimes it's hard to get the head of the needle through, back down through. So sometimes you have to lighten your touch on that just a little bit. And then we just continue around the clover leaf, alternating our running stitch and our French knot. Now that they're all finished, we're going to make them into a banner. Using leftover scraps, you're going to make a 1 1/4 inch strip using a ruler to mark and draw your line. Now we're going to mark 1.5 inches. To make 5 1 1/4 by 1 1/2 inch strips. It doesn't have to be perfect. I'm just gonna go ahead and eyeball that line and cut my strip at that point. I want my clover to hang this direction when I put it on my string for the banner. And so I'm going to put it on the back of this clover leaf. So I'm going to place it 1/2 inch down from kind of the top middle. I'm going to use a low temp hot glue gun to put a strip of glue along the top edge. And I'm going to center that and press it down. And once that's kind of set, which it sets very quickly, I'm going to fold this like this, do the other side, and press it down. And then that's going to act as the hanger for our banner. We're going to go ahead and put these in order, and I think the order that I want to put them in is this one on the end, then this one, then that one, and then this one, and this one. So I'm going to put them in that order, and what I'm going to do is use full floss. So I'm not going to split it. I'm going to take about 2 yards. So here's my 2 yards of floss. And now we're going to go ahead and thread on our banner. So we're going to use a safety pin to thread our loop through. So I'm going to take about 5 inches or so, and I'm going to make a loop. And the way I'm going to do that is I've got my end here, and I'm just going to go through and make a knot. So there's my little end. I'm gonna keep my finger there, and I'm gonna pull. And now I have my hanger loop for where I'm going to hang my banner. And now that I've got my loop, I'm gonna go ahead and just loop it to the pin. And we're gonna go ahead and put my banner together. And because I want this one on the left, I'm gonna start from the right. So here's my order, and I'm gonna flip it like this. And I'm going to pull my thread through, flip it like this, push my thread through,